Okay, now time for the next segment of the show. We are talking about seasonal allergic rhinitis, which loosely speaking is hay fever. And joining me, we have Holly Shaw to talk further about this. Hello, Holly. It's nice to have you with us on the Dennison Syndicated Show.
Hi, good afternoon. Nice to be with you.
Yes, I mentioned hay fever there, and can we start from, I guess, the beginning really? What are the common symptoms of hay fever, please?
Yeah, sure. So, hay fever classically affects people's nose and their eyes. So, once the pollen comes into contact with those areas, it causes havoc. And the allergic symptoms that people experience can be a broad range from sneezing
Yeah.
to a runny nose, itchy, watery red eyes. The nose can sometimes feel blocked and congested. Sometimes the mucus can drip down the back of the throat and cause a bit of a cough. So lots of different symptoms.
Yeah, and you mentioned sneezing as well. That can be quite contagious. When some person sneeze, it makes the other people sneeze. How come that comes about?
Well, sneezing is a response. It's part of hay fever, but it's also seen in other conditions like the common cold. It's also seen in COVID-19 as a symptom. So people are kind of on heightened alert with regards
Yeah.
to sneezing.
Okay, and hay fever, what percentage of the UK does it affect, and has it risen over time?
It certainly has. So we've recently conducted a survey. We polled 7,000 people in the UK, and half of our respondents reported having experienced hay fever symptoms. And over the last 5 years, a significant amount. So, hay fever is out there. It's affecting lots of people. It's not discriminatory of age. It's not discriminatory of gender. We're seeing it in young people, in children, in older people. And this time of year, we're in the middle of the tree pollen season. In May, we'll be moving towards the grass pollen season, which affects the large majority of those people with hay fever. And the symptoms can be really debilitating. Whilst it's a physical immune response to the pollen, it really does impact on people's quality of life and their health and well-being with regards to how they feel because of lack of sleep, because of those allergic symptoms, how they're able to function, their productivity, their ability to concentrate at school or during work.
Thank you. And we're seeing kind of warmer temperatures and the seasons kind of getting later because winter seems to be shifted now towards kind of November to kind of tail end of March, should I say? So the warmer temperatures, has this had an impact on the hay fever?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of environmental influences and pollution, climate change, weather patterns, and they all will affect the amount of pollen that's in the environment at any given time. And sometimes a combination of particulate matter in the air combined with pollen can make people's symptoms worse, especially those people that have underlying respiratory problems or that may have other allergies affecting their airways, like asthma.
Yeah, and is hay fever unbiased in a sense that I know you did mention that it can affect any age, but from the angle of adults and children as well.
Yeah, so there's no bias. It can affect people equally. It often, in children, predisposes asthma. So we'll commonly see smaller children with hay fever and asthma as well. And it's really important for those children and adults alike that they manage their hay fever symptoms effectively, because ultimately what's going into the nose is going to affect the lower airways and the lungs. So we want their hay fever symptoms to be well managed so it doesn't impact on their asthma and predispose them to an asthma attack.
And there's some, of course, supposed to be, I guess, a time of the year to be enjoyed by everyone, but summer must be a frustrating time for sufferers.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the weather conditions lean themselves towards, favourable conditions for high pollen count days, when the weather's warm and it's been dry, when there's a light wind to carry the pollen around, those are the days that people want to be spending time outside, exercising, enjoying social activities. And actually, part of the survey highlighted that people are turning down social engagements due to their symptoms, which is quite a concern after the amount of time that we've been restricted with regards to meeting up with friends and family. So, whilst it's a physical condition, it really does impact on people's quality of life and their health and well-being.
Also, getting out and about, I suppose, is really crucial, going for long walks in the country as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a common misperception that it's just the countryside where people experience hay fever symptoms. But actually, if you have an allergy to tree pollen and you live in the city and there's tree lined streets or avenues, then that can be as problematic as living in the countryside and having all that exposure to grass pastures and fields.
And I know face masks have been kind of helpful during this pandemic, but can they actually be helpful for hay fever sufferers in the sense that it does kind of block out, certain smells and pollution?
Yeah, so if we think about pollen entering the nose, if you're wearing a face mask whilst you're out in the outside environment, then it is an actual physical barrier to pollen being able to enter the nose and cause havoc. So we are hearing reports, and there is some research to support that face masks can help alleviate hay fever.
Okay, and onto pollen levels as well. Can you explain what the readings are considered high and what ppm is?
Yeah, so pollen levels are measured by platforms like the Met Office, and you will often see mentioned during weather reports on the television and radio the pollen counts. And I'm not a meteorologist, I'm not a weather expert. I'm here as a nurse advisor. But what meaningful data we can gain from that is whether the pollen count's high in your area, and it does alter depending on your geographical location. So I would encourage people to listen out for or look for pollen counts, because it does help you plan activities that you do outside, plan your day. There are certain types of the day that pollen counts are naturally higher, and that's first thing in the morning and later in the evening as the pollen comes back down. So maybe avoiding exercising at those certain times can all help with your general hay fever management.
Can you recommend any over-the-counter remedies at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't want anybody to suffer in silence. If you are experiencing hay fever symptoms, I would recommend going to speak to a pharmacist. They're well placed to give advice on treatments and medicines. There's lots of different options, and there's tablet and oral solutions of antihistamines, which most people find help with their hay fever symptoms. There's nasal sprays, there's eye drops, there's a whole range of treatments. So there's something for everybody. So don't suffer in silence. Go along, speak to your pharmacist. If you are really suffering, you've already used an antihistamine, your symptoms aren't getting any better, make an appointment to see your GP.
And finally, can you tell me more about the research you have found out and it's been associated with?
Yeah, so Allergy UK, in partnership with Kleenex, have conducted a survey of 7,000 respondents, and we looked at the quality of life and impact of hay fever on people. And what it showed us was actually half of our respondents had hay fever symptoms and also didn't consult with a healthcare professional on those symptoms.
Well, I think that about wraps up the interview. Thank you so much to Clinical Nurse Advisor Holly Shaw for some indispensable advice there on hay fever today.
Thank you.